So you want to play as a ghost? I'd like to see you try to take on my team.
Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is a game that I was really looking forward to when I first saw the announcement trailers, and then when it finally came out, I didn't buy it. I didn't get it for some reason that I don't remember and I can't explain to you or myself. And then I almost bought it again last fall when the Ecto edition came out, but I didn't because I was worried that the game would be dead. If you've played a lot of asymmetrical games like myself, you know that those games tend to have a very short shelf life. And I just assumed that this game was dead because I don't really see much about it. I don't see much marketing these days. I don't really see reports about updates and DLC and expansions. But with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire out now, which by the way, I reviewed that movie on this channel, you should check out that movie review. But with that movie out, the urge to play Spirits Unleashed has started pulsing in my soul again. And that's when I saw a used copy of Spirits Unleashed at my local video game store for $15, and I had store credit, so I ended up getting this for $7. So I figured for $7 it was worth the gamble to see if this game is still worth playing in 2024. And that's what this video is. I've been playing the game for about a week and a half now, and I want to share with you guys whether or not I think the game is still worth buying and playing in 2024, almost a year and a half after its original release. So again, this is me playing the game for the very first time. This isn't me talking about any specific updates or any specific expansions. This isn't going to be me comparing and contrasting it to its launch state. This review is just from the perspective of some dude who jumped into it blind and is telling you whether or not I think you should do the same. So let's get into the video, but before we do, subscribe. I talk about video games all the time on this page. I'm considering playing Ghostbusters, the video game, for the very first time this week and then making a video about that. But I also talk about movies and TV shows. But enough with this intro. Let's talk about Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. So you start the game, you get a little bit of a story introduction, you complete some short tutorials, and then you customize your character in a relatively decent character creation menu. Then after that, you can jump into your first match as a Ghostbuster, and I gotta say, I was genuinely shocked, and I breathed a sigh of relief when I was immediately able to matchmake into a game. And honestly, the whole time I played this game, I never had trouble finding a game, no matter the time of day. I've played this game at 6 p.m. on a weekend, and I've played this game at 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and pretty much everything in between, and I think the longest I ever had to wait for a game was between 30 to 40 seconds. So this game does have a lively player base, I'm very happy to say that, but sometimes there will be a bot in your party, but more often than not, they'll be replaced by an actual online player pretty early into a round. So how's the game work? What do you do when you play Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed? Well, as a Ghostbuster, your job is to capture the ghost, who is also being controlled by an online player. You'll enter one of the game's maps, and you have to capture the ghost either 3 times or destroy 3 ghost rifts, or a mismatch of those 2 main objectives. And you have to do that before the ghost completely haunts a location. You'll see the haunt progression meter at the top of the screen. It's pretty simple, but it's effective gameplay, and in my opinion, the more simple an asymmetric game is in terms of its mechanics, the better, and the more balanced that it feels. But I'll talk more about that later. But back to the core gameplay as a Ghostbuster. You walk around the map, and you can do various small tasks to delay the haunting and fight back against the ghost. Some of these objectives include calming civilians, because if they get too scared, they'll flee, and that'll contribute to the overall haunt level. You can also destroy smaller, weaker ghosts that are controlled by AI, and this is this game's only real sense of combat. Not that this game really needs combat though, in my opinion. And then of course, you capture and battle the main ghost, who again is controlled by an online player, and that's of course where this game shines the most. When you and your party see the ghost and you try and tether it, and it gets away, or you successfully capture it, it just never fails to feel fun. You could be in one room using your PKE meter trying to slow down the haunt, or you could just be trying to calm civilians, just, minding your own business. Maybe you're collecting mushrooms. Then you'll start hearing the notification buzzer go off rapidly as one of your teammates is frantically tagging the ghost because they spotted it. Then you and your whole team will be running around the building trying to capture the ghost. Civilians will be running around like headless chickens, all while you're racking up a whole bunch of property damage. It definitely can be a damn good time. So anyway, after I played exclusively as a Ghostbuster for a couple of days, I finally jumped into some Ghost gameplay. And this was kind of the moment of truth, because asymmetric games often are incredibly unbalanced when it comes to both sides being fun to play as. Like, in my opinion, the Friday the 13th game is far more fun when you're playing as Jason than as the counselors. But on the other hand, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is more fun as a victim. I don't really have fun playing that game as a killer. But I am ecstatic to report that playing as a ghost is just as fun, if not maybe even a little more fun than playing as a Ghostbuster, in my opinion. And that's great, because this game does do one thing that's unfortunate. In Texas Chainsaw Massacre and in Dead by Daylight, you get to choose whether or not you play as a killer or as a survivor. But in Friday the 13th, you never got to choose who you played as. So if you only liked playing as Jason, you would have to play through multiple survivor rounds, counselor rounds, just hoping you'd get a shot to play as Jason. So you could be playing that game for an hour doing something you don't really like doing, just so you can play one match doing what you like doing for like 20 minutes. This game is unfortunately similar to Friday the 13th, where you don't really get to choose if you play as a ghost or as a Ghostbuster. You do get to choose your preference, but the game will still throw you into both rounds. But luckily, when I set my preference to a Ghostbuster, I never played as a ghost, so that's cool. But when I set my preference as playing as a ghost, I did play as a Ghostbuster sometimes, but still, when my preference was set to ghost, I played as a ghost 80% of the time in that game session. So that's good, at least. But anyway, what's gameplay like as a ghost? Well, like I mentioned before, your goal is to completely haunt a location before the Ghostbusters either capture you 3 times or destroy your 3 ghost rifts. To haunt a location, you can do a variety of different tasks. You can scare the hell out of civilians, causing them to flee. You can haunt objects, like make chairs and tables float around and levitate. You can unleash smaller little AI controlled ghosts that go around and wreak havoc for you. And of course, you can attack the Ghostbusters themselves. You can cover them in slime, you can destroy their gear, or you can hack their devices. And much like the gameplay with the Ghostbusters, it's incredibly simple and yet satisfying at the same time. And also, one of my biggest question marks when it came to this game, when it comes to me jumping into any new asymmetrical horror game, is how well balanced is it? Because again, if you've played a lot of asymmetrical games, you know that balancing can be a huge issue. And luckily, I honestly think that Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is one of the most well-balanced asymmetric horror games I've ever played. In my experience, I feel like the Ghost won 50% of the time, and I feel like the Ghostbusters won 50% of the time. And whenever I was part of the losing side, it never felt like it was because things were unbalanced. It just felt like we got outplayed. And a big reason for that is how simplistic and streamlined and yet satisfying the gameplay and the gameplay mechanics are. This game is not overcomplicated, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. This is a very easy game to learn and an easy game to get your footing. By the time I played my first 3 or 4 matches, I was already performing well, and I was contributing to the match as much as players that were a much higher level than myself. And speaking of players, I can't say this for certain, but in my experience, this is one of the most low-key, casual, friendly, asymmetric gaming experiences that I've ever had. Once again, if you've played a lot of asymmetric games, you know people have a tendency of taking them a bit too seriously. There's a lot of tryhards that let those games determine whether or not they enjoy their own life. But this game just felt mellow. It felt like everyone was just there to have fun for no other reason other than to have a good time and to play this fun game. Now, to be fair, I didn't see any in-game chat, nor did I talk with anyone via a headset, but I read the room each game, and it was very laid back, even between the Ghostbusters and the Ghost. It honestly kind of felt like the innocent period of a new multiplayer game. Have you ever played a new multiplayer game right at launch, and the vibe is just good? Everyone is just green, and everyone is excited to play a new game. And that lasts for a few days before the sweats come out, and all everyone talks about is the meta, and how much that the game they love sucks. My whole experience with Spirits Unleashed felt like the first few days of a new game's release, even though it's well over a year old at this point. Now, I'm going to talk about the story in this game a little bit. This game does have a story, something that's different from a lot of asymmetric games. And personally, the story didn't do anything for me. I appreciate that it was there. If you're a big fan of Ghostbusters, you might like the narrative that's here. It has Dan Aykroyd as a voice actor. It also has Ernie Hudson as a voice actor as well. So if you're a huge fan of the Ghostbusters, you'll be happy that you get to spend time with these characters that you love. The way that this story plays out is you basically just get small story beat moments, small cutscenes that add to the narrative every few levels. So for example, when you hit like level 5 or whatever, you'll get a cutscene and that'll progress the story. And then once that cutscene is over, the game will tell you, reach level 15 by playing multiplayer matches. And then when you reach level 15, you get the next story beat. But anyway, another thing that I want to mention about Spirits Unleashed is that rounds are really fast, and I actually like that a lot. Some asymmetric games can go by too quickly, or more often than not, they can last a long time to the point where it kind of becomes annoying. Rounds in this game are very, very quick, but not too quick. It finds that sweet spot of just mental gaming candy, just jump in for a quick match before you go do something else. And the simplicity of this game and how quickly the matches are, it made it so I never really wanted to play more than 2 or 3 games at a time. Now that can be a good and a bad thing. This is never going to be a game where I plant myself on the couch and I buckle in for a long gaming session. So if that's something that you're looking for in this game, you might not find it here, unless of course you like the core gameplay loop and get more addicted than I was. But for me, I don't consider this a bad thing. I have a lot of games that I play. I have a lot of games that I'm playing through right now, a lot of games that are taking up a lot of my time. So I actually appreciate that Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed doesn't demand so much time. This is a game that I can wake up, I can, drink coffee, I can play a couple rounds before I take a shower and I start my day. Or I can just play like a round or two before dinner, or play a round or two before I go to bed or whatever. It's just a good game for me to fill in the gaps. So yes, I do think that Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is well worth playing today in 2024 in its current state, especially for its price point, but your personal mileage may vary. But since the game is on sale all the time, both physically and digitally, I think that you'll get your money's worth within the first few hours of gameplay. But yeah, that's my full thoughts. Does this game look interesting to you? Are you going to play it, or have you been playing it ever since it launched, or did you start playing it right around the same time I did? Regardless of what your thoughts on the game are, let me know what they are in the comments, and once again, consider subscribing, and thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.